Hello, good evening. I'm Karen Taylor, Program Director of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, and I'm delighted to welcome both our in-person and our online audience to tonight's program. Pigeons. Love them or love them? With photographer Andrew Garn. I have to say this must be one of my favorite lecture titles. Basically, the book, New York Pigeon, Behind the Feathers, which has inspired tonight's talk. It happens to be available for sale this evening. And courtesy of Eleanor of Books and Call, for those in the room, at the back of the room, she will be selling copies of this, and if you're Andrew, will be happy to autograph these. It's also available online through Powerhouse Books. We have a very special window display to celebrate tonight's program by our artistic window curator, Thomas Donahue, which I encourage you all to look at before you leave this evening. And I think it's hard to look at this window without smiling. So it's a very cheerful looking pigeon. For the in-person audience, a reminder to switch off your phones. For those of you who may be less familiar with the General Society, a brief introduction. The General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York is a non-profit organization that was founded in 1785 by the skilled craftsmen of the city. Today, our 240-year-old organization continues to serve and improve the quality of life of the people of the City of New York through our various cultural and educational programs. These include the library, of course, where the in-person audience is seated in this evening. We have our John M. Mossman Lock Museum. Again, in-person audience, welcome to visit the museum after tonight's talk. Our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, and finally, our nearly 200-year-old lecture series, of course, of which tonight is part of. It's such a huge pleasure to welcome back Andrew Garn this evening, who has spoken here several times and has shared his glorious photography with us on a number of occasions. Tonight, he is speaking on a topic he feels very strongly about: pigeons. Andrew Garn is a native New Yorker who grew up surrounded by pigeons. He is a fine art and editorial photographer and a writer whose work has been widely exhibited and read and has appeared in the pages of the New York Times Magazine, New York, National Geographic, Audubon Magazine, Fortune, Forbes, Interview, Vogue, Der Spiegel, French Photo, Elle Decor, and Bloomberg. He has completed 12 previous books, including Brooklyn Arcadia, Art History, and Nature at Majestic Greenwood, New York Art Deco, Birds, Beast, and Blooms, The Houseboat Book, Bethlehem Steel, Exit to Tomorrow, and Subway Style. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you, and he's right behind me, Andrew Garn. Oh.
Beautiful spot. Okay. Oh, Karen, do you want this? I don't need that, do I? Just in case nobody has ever seen a pigeon, I have one. That's from the 1940s, by the way, so it's not a recent pigeon. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to Victoria. Thank you to Karen and Angelo and all the other people at this beautiful place for making this happen. I appreciate it. Now, oh, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting settled. Okay, I'm just getting the feel of the buttons and everything. Okay, just a second. Okay, there we go. Okay, all right. Glasses, there's a lot of accoutrements, you know, you have to have at the ready. Okay, so my name is Andrew Garn, and I have done the book, The New York Pigeon, and I can't stop touching the buttons. And it came out originally in 2018, and it was such a big seller that we had a second edition come out. Yeah, sorry, I'll get the hang of it. Okay, so we had a second edition come out just last year, and it's bigger and better, and it has more metallic ink to it. So I think it's a better value, more ink too. So tonight I'm going to give you a sort of a real visual walk through the world of pigeons in New York and a little bit around the world. We're going to talk a little bit about the science of pigeons, and we're going to cover many facets of pigeondom, including the beauty, the scientific, the history, the folklore, and a bit of pilgrimage travel, as I mentioned. Okay, so let's try this button. Okay, so as I mentioned, as Karen mentioned, I am a native New Yorker, grew up in Brooklyn, moved to Manhattan when I was 6 years old. I started photographing when I was 13. I didn't always photograph pigeons though. I used to work as an editorial photographer, photographing just about everything, including architecture, portraits, food. And I started birding in Central Park approximately 25 years ago. And I noticed there was a thing amongst birders. And you all know birders, maybe some of you are actual birders and have really nice binoculars and all that. And I remember mentioning pigeons to a few of them. And there was this sort of like stuck in the air feeling like, pigeons? Oh, they're so common. Like, why would you spend any time looking at pigeons? And a little light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, this is my calling to make a book about pigeons, and I would show them. So that was a while ago. So starting in around 2000, maybe it was even 2008, I started photographing pigeons. Then the photographs appeared in the New York Times in 2011, and that was sort of the beginning of the progress of, oh yes, I could also move closer to it. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Is that too loud? I don't want to be too loud. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so around 2008, I had this sort of brainstorm that I should just start photographing pigeons. I really had no affinity to pigeons before that. To me, pigeons were like part of the street architecture. They were like lampposts, they were like buildings, they were like just fire hydrants. I didn't really notice them, to tell you the truth. Although going through some old photographs, I did notice I did photograph a group of pigeons in Carl Schurz Park when I was about 13. So it wasn't a very good photograph, but it was in my blood to photograph them. So in any case, I started photographing them. It was in the New York Times, and then some book agents contacted me, and I was sort of on the way. A book wasn't published for about another 7 years because it takes a long time to convince people that they need a book on pigeons. Yeah, they're still not sure about it, although it sold pretty well. And there's even a third edition, so. Okay, so. And this is this is a cover, this is the first cover, the first edition. And as you'll see, the pigeon is a beautiful pigeon, but that's a beautiful pigeon, and it has a real New York attitude to it. Okay, so we're gonna just start off, what is a pigeon? This is a pigeon. And do you think you know pigeons? Does everybody think they know what a pigeon is? Oops, wait, I just, whoa. I want to forget it. Okay, so I learned a lot about pigeons when I was photographing them by going to the Wild Bird Fund. They had just opened. And how many of you know about the Wild Bird Fund? Oh, good. It's a great place. And I called up Rita, who is the co-founder and director, and she was very accommodating and very welcoming to me. And I came in with my photo equipment and my lights, and she taught me how to handle birds. And it was one of the most amazing experiences, because have you ever handled a bird? Anybody here? Okay, oh, quite a lot of people. Wow, so you know, I'm not talking about like a roast chicken. I'm talking about like a live bird. Okay, because birds seem so fragile, and if you just touch it, you're going to break every bone in its body. But they're somehow very sturdy, and they're very lightweight. And once I learned how to do that, I became very comfortable around birds, and it was like the skill I got that I didn't know I needed, but I did. I really needed it. And it was the very beginning of the Wild Bird Fund, and they didn't really have any volunteers, so I thought, well, I'm spending a lot of time photographing. I might as well learn how to clean cages and feed baby birds, and then I became a licensed rehabber, and from there, it just, I started transporting injured pigeons, and I've probably rescued like 200 pigeons and a few hawks, a northern gannet, a falcon, a bunch of birds. There's a lot of birds that are in distress every single day. And a given day, 50 woodcocks in migration season will be found on the street. Woodcocks are very strange birds. They're sort of prehistoric. They have eyes on the side of their head, and I think they don't see buildings well. But that's another story. That's another story. Okay, so we'll continue. Buttons. Okay, of course, pigeons are beautiful, as seen in this portrait of Apollo, who was one of the very first patients at the Wild Bird Fund. Pigeons are pugnacious, and they have to be to live in New York because they're constantly on guard. They're dodging bicycles, unicycles, e-bikes, scooters, jetpacks, helicopters, aquatic vehicles, and pedestrians, so they have to be on guard, plus they have to watch out for hungry hawks and falcons. And then, of course, pigeons are also fluffy. And by the way, I'd say 80% of these pigeons are from the Wild Bird Fund. So these were injured pigeons or sick pigeons that had recovered in various states, and they were released, of course. But sometimes a pigeon has to stay for a month, depending on what's wrong with it, a broken wing. It could have lead poisoning. Now, pigeons are lovers. They actually have a courtship ritual. I don't know if you've ever noticed in a park, you'll see a male pigeon spinning around, spreading its back feathers, and inevitably, as soon as the female is ready for him, they sort of lift the tail feathers, and they have what's called a coacal kiss. And birds have what's called a coacal, which is a sort of all-in-one opening where feces, urine, and also semen passes through. Maybe that's too much information, but so the female will lift up its back feathers, and the male will jump on top, and they will have this coacal kiss that lasts about 10 seconds. But I would say, observing pigeons for quite some time, I would say 9 out of 10 times, a third pigeon comes out of nowhere and breaks it up. I don't know why that is, but observe this when you're out there. But if you do get to see it, it's quite spectacular. And we'll get to this later, but I actually got to see pigeon lovemaking in Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings. Yeah. So, and here's some pigeons. They're enjoying a box of Valentine chocolate. I wouldn't recommend that. And the other thing, the kissing is not just about kissing. Sometimes the male will actually feed the female. Both female and male pigeons produce crop milk, which is a separate organ that they have in their chest. Not just pigeons, many birds have it, including hawks, and it's a sort of high-protein, cheesy substance, like cottage cheese, that they feed to their young. But when they're courting, the male will feed it to the female because he wants to show her that he's a good provider. And by the way, I have some pigeon, this is artisanal pigeon crop milk. Anybody is welcome to try after the lecture. What's so funny? Anyway, we have a spoon, anyway. So you're welcome to try it. It's not bad. It needs salt, but. So, some pigeons can be googly-eyed. And this is an unusual pigeon. This belongs to Eugene, who's the head a vet tech at the Wild Bird Fund he and his wife happen to live with about 35 pigeons, and their home is meticulous. They have a whole separate bedroom for pigeons, and they take in street pigeons. It started with one. He was found under the elevated line in Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, and they took him in, and he's a beauty. I mean, we brought him live to the last book talk I did, and he got way more attention than me because he's just so handsome. And he's, that's another thing. He's probably 10 years old now. Most street pigeons left to their own devices, they only live between 1 and 3 years because there are so many hazards on the street. Whereas a pigeon that lives inside somebody's home can live 20 years. It's similar to feral cats and dogs. They have pretty short lifespans on the street, but if they're pets, it's a different story. Are you okay? Oh. Pigeons can be speckled. And if you notice, some pigeons have what's called on the beak there, that's called a cere, a C-E-R-E, and it's a sort of keratin-based, like our fingernails. It's a base deposit, and some also have it around their eyes. And different breeds of pigeons have varying degrees of those ceres or the eye circles. Pigeons are debonair. And he has a very prominent cere, as you notice, but almost none around his eye. Okay, now pigeon eyes are incredibly variable. They can be white, they can be red, orange, brown, or even lavender eyes. Okay. Okay. Sometimes pigeons like to dress as penguins, as this pigeon. That is a pigeon. Now, this pigeon was found on the street. It was lost. It's obviously a bred pigeon. I think it's a German helmet head pigeon, and a lot of people fly different, pigeon coop owners will fly different types of pigeons, but if they lose their way and they escape, they're never given back to the coop owner, because basically that's a failed pigeon, because if it loses its way, that's why they have them. So they're usually adopted by kind-hearted people who like these kind of pigeons, and the cover image is, I forget the name of that breed, but anyway, it's incredibly frilly with like this boa on its head. So anyway, they're never returned because they would be culled, basically. Now, let's not forget, pigeons are truly vegetarian seed eaters who shouldn't eat bread or hot dogs or rice or cat food or dog food or candy or Valentine chocolates. If you want to feed pigeons, the best thing you can feed them is a wild dove mix, which is corn and different seeds. That's the healthiest for them. But that's the thing with pigeons, they can survive on anything, and that's why they're so successful at living in cities, because I have seen pigeons eat everything, and ironically, I've even seen them eat chicken. Okay, so pigeons are the symbol of peace. Of course, pigeons are doves. The Latin name is Columba livia, which means dove, the color of lead. Now, pigeons are very smart and they're very resourceful. Pigeons, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, we'll get to that. Pigeon spikes under the BQE out in Maspeth, Queens, no problem for a pigeon. They just find a bottle and they stand out of the way of the spikes. That's how smart pigeons are. And this is not a place you really go looking for pigeons, but I just thought that was an interesting illustration of their intelligence. Now, also, pigeons are delicious. And you see at the bottom, we see a patient hawk on the clock of the hand of the clock at St. George Episcopal Church on Rutherford Place, looking up at the pigeons. But they're unfazed, even though they are tasty, because they know that the hawk can't fly up at short distances and grab them. So they know that they're safe. Like hawks are really good at getting things in midair. So they'll basically pick off a flock of pigeons that's going around, and they'll just pick off either the lightest colored one or the slowest one or the oldest one, and I actually am very lucky to have a view of this tower. And when I first moved into the apartment, one day I saw the flock of pigeons flying around in circles, and it was so majestic. And then suddenly a hawk came out of nowhere and just grabbed one. And I was like, yeah, nature's pretty harsh that way. And that's a red-tailed hawk, by the way. So sometimes I get a little tired of pigeons, honestly. It's like pigeons, pigeons, pigeons. The phone is ringing off the hook about pigeons. And I tried to escape. I went to Brighton Beach, but they knew where to find me, unfortunately. It's like, Jesus, can't you leave me alone? They're kind of everywhere. And everybody loves pigeons. This little girl was overjoyed to be put down in the middle of pigeons, as you can see, screaming with joy. And on the right, no relation, is a gentleman who just feels more comfortable feeding pigeons without his shirt. I mean, I would too, if I was him. Yeah, but yes. But they bring joy to so many people. And they also enjoy playing hide and seek. As you can see, the little pigeon eye in there. And pigeons are very socially progressive. Both the males and the females share parenting chores. Basically, the male or the female will take care of the eggs, feed the young, because like I mentioned, they make the crop milk. They both make crop milk. And they also take over if, let's say, two pigeons are away on a business trip, they'll take over for those pigeons and take care of their young. You know, they live in groups and they're very group oriented. You'll see them bathing together, feeding together. They're very gentle, I think. That's why I like them. Okay. Now, pigeons, of course, are real New Yorkers. They're not imposters. They've been here since the 1600s. You know, the Dutch brought them over. That's how they first got here, actually. In the St. James colonies, they brought pigeons over for food. They basically starved to death because they didn't know how to hunt. They didn't know how, and so they basically ate the only pigeons that they had. And from there, pigeons were introduced to the New World, and they got everywhere, let's just say. And here's some beautiful, pigeons incorporated in architecture. On the right is a foggy Sunday morning at the Williamsburg Bridge, and on the left is sort of an aspirational pigeon, I like to say. He figures, some of that regal eagle will wear off on him. And then, like real New Yorkers, pigeons live in tiny, tiny apartments. So next time you see a pigeon, you can see they don't mind, like we don't mind. And then they also appreciate art. This is an exhibit I did in Brooklyn. It was all about pigeons. So we had live pigeons. It was called the Pigeon Repopulation Project, and it was sort of a made-up thing that pigeons were endangered and that we had to reintroduce them into the wild. So we had 2 live pigeons in a room that was set up to look like a rooftop with a mural, and it had ventilators for rooftops, and of course, both pigeons had 2 babies each because they had unlimited food. So if there's unlimited food, they'll have lots of babies. So we raised the babies from little eggs. It was very fun to see them. And pigeons enjoy architecture, as you can see. On the left is the Alwyn Court building. If you know that building, it's on 58th Street. It's quite ornate, which is sort of its downfall because there's so many niches for pigeons. This is St. Patrick's Cathedral, of course. That's the New York Public Library, which is the most iconic place for pigeons, of course. And pigeons can also look like your grandmother. I mean, that looks exactly like my grandmother. Now, contrary to popular belief, everybody thinks pigeons are so busy they don't have any time to bathe. They love bathing. So whenever they get a chance, they bathe themselves, because they'll find a puddle in a curb and they will bathe themselves, as you can see. And here's 4 states of fluff. So this is how pigeons look when they get really wet and they need to sort of air out the feathers. But it's kind of interesting to see that. And then when it's cold out, how do pigeons bathe? They use snowflakes. So this is them. This is how many pigeons? I think it's 84 pigeons bathing with the snowflakes in the Washington Square Arch. So they basically lift up their wings, and as the snow melts, cleans them. Okay, so this is sort of a retrospective moment, sort of mid-lecture. I think pigeons are our most important bird, and you can argue against me if you like, but pigeons are on stamps, for one thing. I don't think anybody here is on a stamp. No, okay. Pigeons have been used for religious sacrifices for thousands of years. Does anybody here know anybody who was used in a sacrifice? No, I didn't think so. And pigeons, they were messengers. Even Genghis Khan used pigeons as his postal system, covering thousands of miles from Europe to East Asia using pigeons. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. And they were also the most common poultry eaten by Americans 100 years ago. Nobody, because they didn't start breeding chickens to have giant breasts. It was pigeons, squabs, that everybody ate. There's squab farms in California where they would, and pigeons were so easy to care for because they would fly out during the day and feed themselves basically and come back at night because of their homing abilities, and then have babies. And what they're eating is the squab. The squab is the adolescent pigeon that has not learned to fly. So its breast muscles are still tender. They're not tough and muscly. So, of course, poor little chickens that grow to maturity in 3 months, they never fly. They never, they're not really birds, actually. And pigeons are decorated war heroes, as you probably know, and they're still used in armies today, believe it or not, because imagine if the internet goes out or the electrical grid goes out, pigeons will still carry messages, and they do. The Japanese use them, the Israeli army uses them, and the Belgian army uses them still to this day. And so this is 4 different views of pigeon farms in California. This is like 1910 or so, and you can see they had millions of pigeons. Quite, 1920. The pigeon-human connection, of course, is over 5,000 years old. On the left, we see a Roman pigeon mosaic from the 1st century BC. See, we have giant pigeons pulling chariots. And back in Rome, there were giant pigeons. They were like this big. So that's what they're showing. And then this is a dovecote in Petra from 5th century BC. You can see the little hole openings. They've been sort of worn away by the wind, but that's where pigeons live. Now, as we mentioned before, pigeons are ultra smart and they're tireless. So if you give them a treat, they will work 20 hours to learn a task. So B.F. Skinner, who was the Harvard behavioral psychologist, he worked a lot with pigeons. You may have heard his name. So he used positive reinforcement, which is used by a lot of dog trainers today. So he also taught pigeons to guide missiles, believe it or not. So there they are being put in a nose cone of a missile in the middle slide, and they would peck at a target, and they were more accurate. This is pre-computer, so they were more accurate than human pilots, basically. And he took this to the Navy to show them it really worked, and they kind of were like, no, we can't say we use pigeons. Sorry. So, and then computers came along, and it was all moot at that point. But you can see his assistants are placing them in their little flight suits so that they would work all day because they were pecking at a target and they got a treat. Once they followed the target, they would get a treat. And he also taught them to play a certain type of ping pong. So the pigeon they would do this for hours. If they could get the ball past the other pigeon, they would get a treat. You see, you can't see it, but underneath there's a little drawer, and they would get a treat. So it was a real competitive sport. And pigeons, this is very interesting, they're one of only 10 animals that have self-recognition abilities. They can see themselves in a mirror, not to see that there's a pigeon in the mirror, but they know it's them. And how do they test that? By putting a red mark on their forehead, and they will try to take it off. And they realize that they're looking at themselves. And there's only 10 animals that do that. Dogs do not do it, cats do not do it. It's bonobos. The only other bird is a magpie, European magpie, whales, dolphins, and pigeons. They have incredible visual acuity, which we'll get to in a little bit. They can also, and there are over 2,000 pigeon studies, and this is true. I mean, this is really true. Some things I said were stretching it, but this is very true. They can tell the difference between Impressionist and Cubist painting, successfully learning, and this is all with trees, they've learned to successfully discriminate paintings by Monet and Picasso, Pissarro. They can really do that. They can also, accurately analyze X-rays to find cancerous tissues at an 85% success rate, which is the same as human radiologists. Yeah, because they have incredible vision. So, and they're tireless. They're not thinking about a cup of coffee or what they did last night. It's kind of true. It's 86% is the accuracy rate, actually. Okay, and pigeons are very graceful in flight. And one reason is it's hereditary, because they mostly came from barren, like hillside, cliff sides where there was no vegetation to protect them. So if a predator bird is coming in, they have to be able to just get out of the way. So hawks and falcons may fly faster, but pigeons maneuver much better. Wait, did I skip one? Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, so as we're saying, why are they such good flyers? And these are in the book as well. These are high-speed photographs, high-speed flash photographs to freeze the wings to see the motion. So pigeons are this incredibly efficient 13-ounce flying machine. One half of a pigeon is feathers, and the other half is the flesh, the bones, the tendons. Each pigeon has approximately 1,500 feathers. Each feather has a different shape to it. So some are for flight, some of them are for insulation. Some birds, that's sort of a normal amount of feathers. A tundra swan, which lives up in the Arctic, they have 100,000 feathers because they have to be so well insulated. But you can't have too many feathers if you have to fly, because then you would weigh too much. So they're perfectly designed. I mean, birds have evolved over the years not to have teeth. Why? Because they have an organ called the gizzard, where they can take little pebbles that grind down their food. So they don't have teeth, so they save money not going to the dentist, and it saves weight too. So it's incredible that birds are so efficient. Yeah. So that's why sometimes you'll see a pigeon eating like little pebbles, tiny little pebbles or stones, because they need to digest those for their gizzard, and the gizzard actually grinds down the food instead of them chewing it like we do. So it's a real money saver. Okay, so this is a good example. This is sort of a halfway stage pigeon, adolescent pigeon. You can see everything about it. It's a little dinosaur-esque. Maybe it could be beautiful to its mother. I think it's really beautiful, but you can see it's in that stage, that very awkward stage, teenage years, a little gangly, but it still has its downy feathers from the egg, which were insulation. Those will fall out, but it's getting all its mature feathers. And it's kind of incredible because feathers just come out and they pierce the skin like little tiny barbs, and then they unravel into the feathers that we know. So that's what this pigeon is happening to it. So it's not abnormal. And you can see how giant its feet are. But you can see, and you can also see the ear of the pigeon behind the eye. And it still has the little white tip at the top. It's called I forgot what that's called. That's what they use to pierce the egg when they're in their egg. Okay, so this is an X-ray of a pigeon and who actually has a broken wing. Whoops, has a broken wing, as you can see with the blue arrow. So this is under observation at the Wild Bird Fund. They actually made a little splint for it and it recovered and it could fly just fine after like a month or so. So you see the femur, you can see the vertebrae, the skull, of course. Okay, so you may or may not know, many birds, or most birds, have hollow bones, another evolutionary thing, because they're super strong structurally, but they save weight by having holes in their, so you'll see the wing at the top behind the head, you'll see the wing bone has a big opening, but there's no wasted space. There are actually air sacs in there, which pigeons have about 11 air sacs, which feed the lungs. They work in concert with the lungs. I'll show you in the next slide, I think. Okay, so this is sort of an exploded view. And you can see that, sorry, the air sacs are circled. So they're all arranged in different spots in the body. So there are some by the abdomen, there are some by the crop. That's the crop that makes the milk. And then, but they also have air sacs in the wings, which is kind of amazing. So they can be inhaling and exhaling, and the air sacs are still delivering oxygen to their heart. Their heart rate is 600 beats a minute when they're flying. Okay, so this is just the respiratory system. Okay, so the air sacs are in blue, and the lungs are purple, so they sort of overlap. But that's a lot of space given over to breathing. It's kind of amazing. This is a side view, and we can see the giant muscle. That's the pectoralis major muscle. That's what is eaten on most birds. On a pigeon, it's 1/3 of their body mass. That's what powers their wings. That's what makes them such incredible flyers. I mean, watch a pigeon or any bird really take off from standing still, and it takes a lot of thrust, a lot of power, a lot of musculature, and pigeons have it. I mean, 1/3 of their weight is just that muscle. Those muscles, there's two, obviously. And of course, some pigeons, homing pigeons, fly 500 miles nonstop. Oops, I don't want to jump ahead to this. And they don't even need to stop for water or food. You know, people who have lofts, you know, they'll drive the pigeons 500 miles, let's say to Western Pennsylvania, and they time, it's a competitive thing, and they'll time how long it takes for their pigeons to come back. And the winner gets some kind of prize, like something like that. Okay, so this is a CT scan of a bird head, which is kind of amazing just to see everything, you know, all the blood vessels that carry blood to the brain, to the eyes, to the mouth. So one of the things that pigeons have, and there are so many studies on this, is incredible navigational abilities. You may or may not know that. So they use magnetic bits that are in their beaks. They feel the magnetic field of the Earth. They use that for navigation. It's called an inclination compass, and it senses the Earth's magnetism. But also they smell atmospheric gases. So on a very highly polluted day, their actual sense of smell is better, and they can find their way because they know cities smell worse. There's more gases there. They know that's the way home. So when there's like, it depends, you know, on where the wind direction is, but that's one of the methods they use to find their way home. But then also they have ultra low hearing. It's called infrasound. Their hearing goes down to 0.1 hertz. The lowest, like a young human being would have, is 20 hertz. So they can actually hear the ocean waves breaking 10 miles away. So a pigeon can always find its way off a boat. It could be in the middle of the ocean. It will always find its way back to land because using all of these abilities, the magnetic field, the hearing, the smell. And this is our sort of travel section. Pigeons are globetrotters, as we know. I was very lucky in 2019, I got a grant from the government to go on a pigeon hajj. This was like the pre-government that we used to have. And I was able to see pigeons in their natural habitat because pigeons came from the Middle East, basically. So here they are, that's the actual pyramids, that's not Photoshop. And then on the left, we see an old Egyptian dovecote. Dovecote means house for, it's a little house for birds. And it has many little holes for egress, and then it's basically just made of mud and straw, and sticks come out for perching, but pigeons aren't really perching birds, so they sort of don't get used. And here is the Valley of the Kings. I don't know how many of you have heard of it. It's outside of Luxor. It has over 8,351 Google reviews, 4.6 on Google. And that's where it's probably the richest archaeological site, one of the richest in the entire world. That's where the tomb of Tutankhamun was found. They're still finding tombs there, and we were lucky enough to go there. And you're in this valley of limestone, going down these tunnels and looking at the hieroglyphs, and they're opening all these tombs, and there's gold everywhere. It's the most amazing thing. And taking a breather, I sort of looked up at these cliffs. What did I see? Pigeons in their natural habitat. It was amazing. I was just like, this is a very important spot on the earth, and this is where pigeons come from. You see, it's outside of Luxor. If you ever get a chance, it's worth the trip, and you can give your own Google review. Okay, so here's some pigeons in their natural habitat in the Valley of Kings. They're flying on some statuary, and that's where pigeons come from. Crevices, does that remind you of anything? Buildings, cornices, Wait, and there's one, in the upper right-hand corner, it's not too big because I didn't want to upset anybody for trigger warning purposes, but that's actually pigeon procreation in the cliffs of Valley of the Kings. So, and they live inside, and there they are. Those are pigeons. Pigeons are also worshipped in India, I would say. That's not even an exaggeration. This is the Red Fort outside of Jaipur, and there's people that feed them all day long and give them water, and it's kind of like their fort. This was built in 1638, I believe. Okay, and this is also at the fort, so you can see there's quite a few. Too many pigeons? No, never. There's never too many. Okay, and then there are men that sell birdseed on the street, and it's a very busy time before work because people are buying birdseed to feed to the birds, to the pigeons mostly, and because they're very big believers in reincarnation. So that pigeon that you're feeding could very well be your grandfather. So it's a big thing. That guy does really well. He makes like $200,000 a year selling birdseed. And then that's the monkey god, Hunaman, and he's the monkey deity, and he also loves pigeons. And okay, of course, does everybody know what that is? Of course, that's the Taj Mahal, which is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, made of marble and precious metals. It was built by Shah, whatever, for his wife who died in childbirth, giving her 14th child. So he built this as a shrine to her. But what I found most impressive, not only beyond the beauty, is they let pigeons live inside the Taj Mahal. So as we were going in, pigeons were flying out. So they don't care. To them, it's like a blessing to have pigeons live inside. Could you imagine if pigeons lived inside the lobby of the Empire State Building? No. Okay, and this is a place I visited in Delhi. It's called the Jain Charity Bird Hospital, and this was a really interesting side trip for me. It's in a Jain temple, and the Jains, it's a sort of an offshoot of Hinduism. and they're very kind to animals. The Wild Bird Fund now takes care of 12,000 birds a year. They take care of 72,000 birds a year. It's kind of amazing. It's like 4 stories. So here's some views. These are some, that's their sort of version of the red-tailed hawk. That's a kite. There's actually a movie about the kites, which came out last year, I think. Some of their patients, they kind of look like our patients. Now, of course, Venice, as we mentioned, has had this history of pigeons. And there was a mayor about 20 years ago who culled about 5,000 pigeons. And of course, he didn't get reelected. That was like, but this is a postcard that I have from 1900 or so, and many of those pigeons are the ancestors of today's pigeons. So when you look at them, you're like, I've seen pictures of your great, 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 great. So, and this is some, it's a time-honored, it's just time-honored that kids chase pigeons, feed pigeons. People love to have pigeons fly into their hair. That's a little too much for me, but here they are, on this beautiful clock. Okay, so now we're going to go back to pigeons. Has anybody here seen a baby pigeon? A lot of people. Amazing. Where? Where? On a windowsill. Oh, good. Your own windowsill. Okay, excellent. So that's good. Where? Oh, interesting. Okay. So then So this is a mother hatching her eggs. And notice her eye here is very big. Okay, so this is a pigeon, an egg actually, that somebody was going to destroy. It turned out that they had an exterminator come to their building in the East Village, and they called Rita, and they said, what do I do? And she said, well, I know somebody who might try to raise the pigeon. So that happened to be me. So I met her, and I brought this little egg home, actually 2 eggs. And I put it on a heating pad, and nothing happened. So I just thought they weren't really viable. And one morning I came in, and suddenly the egg burst open, but there was nothing there. And this little wiggly thing that is about the size of your thumb, just not your whole thumb, just the tip of your thumb, wriggled around. It was just this writhing little worm of a thing, blind. And I raised it as if I was its mother. And you can see this is day 1 or day 2 actually. That's my hen. So they're very cute. But they can't hear. They can't do anything. Oh, and you can also see the egg tooth thing, the nib at the end of the beak. That's for breaking the shell. And as they get older, it starts to recede. Now this is again awkward youth. It's sort of an aerial view. Okay, now this is baby's first steps. So you can see, they can't fly, obviously, but they're moving their little arms, wings, whatever you want to call them, to get the muscles going. So this is about 6 or 7 days old. And pigeons, of course, are rock stars. And pigeons also guard their own banks. This is out in Crown Heights, actually. And it's there. You can see this. It's the U.S. Pigeon Trust Company. It's there. It's near Nostrand Avenue, if you're interested in seeing it, but it is there. And of course, Nikola Tesla, not the Tesla car, Nikola Tesla loved pigeons, and he actually spent the last years of his life living in the New Yorker hotel in a room with a broken window, and the pigeons would come and go, and he spent most of his afternoons in Bryant Park feeding the pigeons. But he had a very special relationship with one of the pigeons, and I'm just going to read this. This is his quote. "I've been feeding pigeons, thousands of them, for years, but there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. That one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her, and she would come flying to me. I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman. And she loved me. As long as I had her, there was purpose in my life." So in summation, should pigeons be our national bird? Yeah, okay, thank you. I agree, thank you. We'll have a vote on this, a straw poll later. And then that's it, and that's good night for now. And these are pigeons, these are pigeons sleeping in Herald Square, and you see they sort of tuck themselves in on a ledge. I found this kind of amazing when I first saw this because they could fall. You know, in your sleep, you could easily fall, but they're pigeons and they don't. So, okay, and this is, I have some social media things, and and some other books I did, Wildflowers, New York Art Deco, New York by Neighborhood. I did a book on Greenwood Cemetery last year, and that's this book. And we can take questions. I think we have time. Thank you. Oh, and after the question period, feel free to come up. You want to come up now and try this? No, okay. No, it's very good. I mean, if you don't trust me, I'll ask you first. Yeah. That's fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pigeon milk, that's a first for our lectures.
It's very thick, though.
Oh, I see that. It's like curdled yogurt.
Yeah, similar to that.
Yes.
Similar, but it's not dairy.
It's not dairy. Okay, I've got it. Yeah.
So don't worry about that.
Andrew, that was fantastic. You are absolutely the ambassador for penguins. I wasn't. Oh, penguins?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. I'm glad you paid attention. That's really nice. She's on the ball. That's very good.
For pigeons. Now, there might have been a few facts I wasn't completely sure about, but perhaps we have some questions from the audience. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
And the online audience, please feel free to submit questions.
I just wondered what you fed the baby pigeon.
That's the tough part. You have to get a special needle. It's a stainless steel, basically a needle that has an opening at the end, and you have to put the mixture of food in it and jam it down their throat. And at first, because it's this big, and I could see it was withering away, and I just sort of rallied my mental state and said, I just have to, I don't want this little pigeon to die. I need to jam it there, and you give food. It's like every hour they have to be fed, so it's very, very time consuming. And then it started to get bigger and bigger, and it grew. Well, pigeons, as I mentioned, use crop milk, but we had to use something that is a facsimile of it. There's actually some cat food because it's high in protein, that's moistened, obviously. There's bird food, there's liquid bird food for baby birds also, so it was a mixture of those things, and it did work, yeah. I wouldn't want to do it again, because I'm not really a bird, and the thing, birds, when they feed their young, they have, they have probiotics in their food, they have all these things you can't possibly provide for a baby bird, so. No, I do not.
This is also a feeding question of sorts. Mm-hmm. What sort of treat does a scientist use to entice a pigeon to guide a missile or play ping pong?
They're not that picky, just like any kind of food. Peanuts, they love peanuts, but break them up, not a whole peanut. That's a little too much to swallow. So break up peanuts into little pieces if you're thinking about what to get your pigeon for Christmas or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to have some online questions after this question.
That strong homing instinct that they have, is it the same as what makes other birds migrate? Is that the same instinct?
Similar, yeah.
But pigeons, they don't migrate. They don't go to Florida for like New Yorkers do.
No, because there's plenty of food here. They would if they didn't have enough food here. Like, birds are kind of lazy. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of energy. Like, think of hummingbirds. They fly over the Gulf of Mexico to get to their winter places. I mean, the amount of energy, they weigh like 2 ounces or not even. So for a bird to migrate, they have to really put an effort into it, and they have to, whereas pigeons don't have to. Why should they? You know, but I've noticed over the past 20 years, a lot of birds don't migrate anymore. Like robins used to migrate to the Carolinas, but it's gotten warmer, and now there's 41 robins last winter in my park. So they, even though the ground might be frozen, they eat berries from the trees and things like that, so they can survive. But migrating takes a lot of energy, so if they don't have to do it, they won't.
And I went to a tour a long time ago. There used to be, the ladies around my age might remember the Maiden Form Company. They made brassieres and stuff.
Yeah.
And during the war, they made, instead of making all these beautiful brassieres, they made this like little, it was like a brassiere cup on a sling, so that the pigeon could be carried safely by the soldier. He had to be, yes, so.
Wow, I never heard that. That's really great. Wow, I have to look that up. Thank
I
you.
won the war with my Maiden Form.
Wow,
pigeon.
was that really? Wow, I won the war. That's excellent. That's amazing. Thank you.
And now Victoria has some online questions.
You, Andrew, but first I have a question. So in terms of naming pigeons, it's a lot to keep track of. So do you try to name them? And when you call them, like how do you get their attention or call them?
Just shake a little bag of food or
Okay. And it
throw a bag of seeds. It doesn't take much to get
It
their
gets their
attention. But it's
attention.
funny, I live across from a little park, and before the pandemic, I like to use this, there was about 55 pigeons in the park. That's just the west side of the park. There was a whole nother flock on the east side of the park. But during the pandemic, I think people thought, oh my God, these pigeons are gonna die, and like everybody thought that. Now there's 150 pigeons, and so, and it's funny because the people I know that feed the pigeons, they all name them different things. So, you know, this, and some are very friendly, like they'll come, they're not averse to jumping on your shoulder or coming. Some are more skittish, of course, but, and those are the hits, you know, the ones that have the personality, those are the ones that get the most food.
No, and I'm going to get to the questions, but I had a flashback. It's probably common in your lectures. I'm a native New Yorker, so I had a pigeon flashback.
Oh.
I forgot, as a kid, we had a pigeon on our fire escape. My mother received a plant that failed. It was a failed tomato plant, and then the pigeon was a baby pigeon, took up residence there, and we named him.
Oh,
I
nice.
know he was sad, so his name was Dim Tim.
Dim
And
Tim.
we still have him in family albums, old family albums.
Oh, that's
That
so
is-
sweet. Dim Tim.
Dim Tim.
That's a very
yes.
sweet name.
But he grew happier and then he flew away.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay, this question probably doesn't surprise you because everyone's thinking it. So thank you for this phenomenal talk. Is there any way for the online audience to try the crop milk in the future?
Just, I'm online, the New York Pigeon is on Instagram. You can messenger me on Instagram if you
Okay.
want. Yeah, meet in the park and give it a go.
All right, and your favorite thing about pigeons? What is your favorite thing? That's from anonymous attendee.
Okay, I think that I just love the way, watching them fly. I think that's just kind of amazing. Like just in general, I like watching them because they're kind of hilarious. They kind of walk like Charlie Chaplin, and they're not very graceful when they walk, which is kind of strange, but then as soon as they fly, they're just amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that was Marsha Raymond who asked about the milk. And then another anonymous attendee, do you still have the pigeon that you raised?
No, I don't. Somebody
Right.
asked that, yeah.
Yes, okay. All right, that's all for the moment.
Okay, well, we have some more online questions.
Hi, thank you so much. 3 sort of related questions. Number 1, how long does the pigeon sit on the eggs before it hatches? I'm sorry, yeah?
Yeah, no, go on. Oh, it's about 10 days. No, I'm sorry, 18 days.
Okay.
10 days to gestation. So once the coacal kiss happens, they will lay the eggs in 10 days, and the hatching takes 18 days approximately. So, and as I said, the male and the female will both sit on the egg, or other friend pigeons will do the same.
Okay, then how long do the babies stay with the parents?
for quite some time, actually. And then they just hang out in the group, because you always see, it's funny because you can always, well, once you learn about pigeons, you can see like a 2-month-old pigeon, because they're full grown at that point. And within a month, they're full grown. So that's when they were eaten. Those are the squabs before they can actually fly on their own, but they're full grown and nice and meaty, and if you know what I mean. And they will hang out. They don't go off on their own. They don't need to establish their own colony. They'll hang out with the parents' flock, basically. And if you look carefully, you can always tell a younger pigeon. Usually their beaks are thinner. They don't have the sears, as we mentioned, the big keratin deposits. They don't have that, but virtually they're indistinguishable, except for, and sometimes if you look really carefully, they'll still have some downy yellow feathers sticking up in their head. So that's how you tell. But after like 2 months, they're pretty much fully grown.
And can you tell the difference between male and females? Are the males prettier?
No. The only way to tell the difference is, well, there's actually an old wives' tale that if you hold a pigeon like this and balance it in your hand, if it tips up, if it's tail, we'll use this pigeon, let's just say. Okay, so if you hold it in your hand and the pigeon tips up like this, it's a female. If it goes down like this, it's a male. That's what they say. But truly, the only way to tell, because they're about the same size and all that, is to observe them and see the ones that puff up and try to jump on the other ones. Those are the males. And yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was just wonderful. I've had a question for a long time in my mind. I have a little garden in Brooklyn. I do put out seeds and suet. And I've always had mourning doves. There are pigeons in the neighborhood. They have never come into the yard. And I wonder why.
Are there cats or dogs or
No, no. This is going on like 30, 40 years.
I mean, unless you really want them.
No, I prefer the
I'd say
mourning
it's sort
doves.
of
I'm
good.
sorry.
Yeah, no, mourning doves, I feel like they're not real tough city birds. So I feel like you need to, if they have a habitat in your garden, you should keep that up. Because they don't do well in rehab either. They're
Really?
yeah, they really don't.
Wow.
No, seriously, because they get very skittish and they'll end up like flapping their wings in a little container and they'll actually hurt themselves.
Wow, okay.
Where pigeons are so used to humans, like when you hold a pigeon that's getting care, they know that you're helping them. A mourning dove is more of a wild bird, and so if you have a habitat for them, I think that's good.
Well, I'm quite happy with it, but I was just so curious.
Yeah,
What's
I
wrong
don't
with
know
my
why.
yard?
Yeah, that's weird. Because a lot of times, that's the thing, pigeons might muscle their way in, and then push the mourning doves out.
Right, we're just going to take a few more questions, and I know there's you too, but I'm going to go to someone at the front, and then I will be back. And Victoria, I don't know if you have any more online questions, and to finish up.
I just want to know about this beauty there, the one that looks like Jaja Gabor. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so that pigeon came into the Wild Bird Fund, and they immediately named it Belle de Jour, named after the Louis Buñuel film, which, if you don't know about it, Catherine Deneuve played a sort of lonely, unhappy housewife who decides to spice up her life by becoming a prostitute during the day. And, so they named this pigeon after her. Unfortunately, Belle de Jour turned out to be a male pigeon. But that's okay. He's very, very comfortable with his sexuality, though. So, but yeah, it's a, I think it's a German helmet pigeon. I was mistaking him with the other pigeon. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. There are something like 300 breeds of pigeons, and they, of course, they don't occur naturally. They've all been tweaked by human intervention. And Darwin was a big pigeon breeder and he worked on Origin of the Species based on his work with pigeons, because you could change the look of a bird in just like 3-4 generations, which could be half a year. It'd only take half a year where you could make a pigeon look like this. So he was really fascinated, and in fact, his friend Liddell, who is the geologist, I think, he showed him an early version of On the Origin of the Species, and he told him, you should do a book, forget this, do a book about pigeons. Everybody wants that. That's true. That is actually true.
I've been told that after the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster, they discovered that pigeons who had bars on their wings were particularly resistant to radiation poisoning. Wonder if you've heard anything about that?
No, you mean bars,
Yeah,
colored
the
bars.
coloration on them.
Yeah.
Coloration.
No, I haven't heard anything about pigeons and Chernobyl, to tell you the truth. I know that there's wild dogs there, all sorts of animals that survive, but yeah, I don't know anything about pigeons. I'll look into it. And the maiden form, of course.
Yeah, my question is about the pigeon droppings.
Yeah.
Because I've read that there's areas of the world where the whole economy was based on high-grade fertilizer made from the pigeon droppings, as those circular pigeon houses that you showed.
Well, that it used to be. So in Egypt, I don't know if I got to that, but there was actually, those pigeon houses were basically fertilizer factories. So 100 years ago, they didn't have man-made fertilizer. They didn't know about nitrogen, or maybe, I don't know when that was invented. So they used pigeon droppings. So basically, those pigeon houses were a depository for pigeon poop. And some of them were guarded 24 hours a day by armed guards, because that's how valuable guano was. And the Nile Valley is so fertile today because of pigeon droppings. But then, of course, nitrogen-based fertilizer sort of put the pigeons out of business. So it's sad.
Victoria, do we have any online questions? Okay, well
There's a
then,
lot here. Wait, maybe 2 more questions? There's
okay,
still 3
okay.
more.
Well, you point out the 2 then, Andrew.
Okay, yeah. Whoops, yeah. Whoops.
Hello.
Hi.
Lovely talk.
Thanks.
I don't know if this question is even worth asking. However, I've seen online that pigeons are kind of comically bad nest builders.
Yes, definitely.
And
Well, they'll pick up one stick
Yeah.
and lay it on the floor, and that's their nest. Yeah. Somebody posted something where a pigeon came into their apartment with 1 stick, and that was their nest on top of their refrigerator or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to see if it was true.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cool.
I wanted to mention something. I don't know if you've heard, but it's been in the news about pigeon nettings. This has been going on for 20, 30 years. There are some very evil people that go around the city, and they throw down seed, and they throw down these nets, and they take 50 pigeons at a time. They just go up and down the avenues, and they sell them for pigeon shoots in Pennsylvania, because it's illegal to do that. And they clip the wings of the pigeon so they really can't fly away, and they shoot them, for practice basically, and they get $3 a pigeon. And we started, a group of pigeon fanciers started protesting. There's a store allegedly and I'm pretty sure this is true, it's a halfway house for this exchange of pigeons. So these guys that have van loads of pigeons, 100 pigeons, 200 pigeons, they take them there, and then they're shipped out to Pennsylvania. And the NYPD, they actually have a animal welfare department. They've been trying to put these guys out of business. Everybody knows them. I've caught these guys 3 times. They're nasty, nasty people. And they might spend a night in jail and pay a $100 fine, and that's the cost of doing business. But until they ban pigeon shooting in Pennsylvania, it's just going to continue.
Okay, Andrew, why don't you select the final question?
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, well, you did ask a question before. How about the gentleman back there? Did he, in the cowboy hat? The gentleman on the horse? No, okay. Okay, then we'll go back. You have another question, yes.
Hold on.
Okay, after,
Okay.
we'll do you. We won't cut you off.
Was it? Who was it? Who was it?
The woman there who had asked the question about the maiden form.
Wanted to ask, what is that, that head motion?
Well, it helps them, it actually helps them see depth. So by moving their head, they're actually seeing depth. Oh, and I didn't mention that, but pigeon brains are about 1/2 of their brain is given over to visual perception. So, and their eyes are flat, their pupils, or not their pupils, the eyeball is actually not a ball, it's kind of flat, and they have depth of field between like an inch and infinity. So when they're pecking on the ground, eating seeds, they can see a hawk coming out of the sky. So just incredible, yeah. So the man in the back, this is the last question.
Now, sir, when I come over to you, I'm going to ask you just to ask a question, okay? I do know this gentleman, so if you could just stick to a question and not a dissertation, that would be fantastic.
I will do that. I will
Thank
do that.
you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. No, very simple. Pigeons supposedly from Dutch import. So my question is,
Wait, sorry, I missed, what did you say? Pigeons are,
you said they started in Netherlands, the Dutch import?
that's how they came to the New World.
Oh, to the New World.
They originally came from the Middle East, Africa, that whole, that whole area. Actually, apparently they came from like the Euphrates River area. And then they spread out, as I mentioned, we saw them in India, Egypt, so that's their homeland.
Okay, so I happened to go to 2 decades ago, I went to Venice, St. Marcus Plaza. There were pigeons all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. But my question is, do you happen to know by predominance where the pigeons are in the world? I mean, in New York, you see them, New York City. So I'm just wondering, is there a measurement, how many, what?
How many
Where
pigeons
pigeons
are in the
are
world?
located in the world?
I guess, this is just a guess, 1 billion, which is probably like very, it's probably a low estimate because everybody knows about the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon was similar to a pigeon, slightly longer, reddish, iridescence. There was billions of those. They would cover the skies for hours in flocks. So there were way more passenger pigeons than pigeons ever were, but they died out in 1913 because they lost their habitat. They cut down all the trees, basically. Like in the Adirondacks was cut to the ground. Every tree was cut down in the Adirondacks. What you see there is all new growth. That was their habitat. So apparently Teddy Roosevelt was the last person to see a flock of passenger pigeons, and the last passenger pigeon died in a zoo in Cincinnati in 1913. So there were billions in the United States, so I think 1 billion is a very low estimate of pigeons, that's all. It's the best I can do.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you.
If you've never seen a pigeon, if you've never seen a pigeon,
Yes.
here's one.
Okay. What a fabulous presentation. About penguins, yeah. But maybe next time you can do pigeons, maybe. Okay? Okay. Anyway, it was really fantastic. Of course, your humor and your wonderful photographs just made the lecture. So it was really terrific. And I do want to mention that you can find more facts. You may have thought Andrew covered practically every fact, but in this book, there'll be even more facts, and I know that Andrew would be happy to sign it for you. And this, of course, is the New York pigeon behind the feathers. So again, thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And Andrew, just to add to that, all of Andrew's books are beautiful. You're an incredible, a magnificent photographer, and I'll never forget the first lecture with Andrew. His sense of humor took me by surprise. I was like, this man is so funny. So we always enjoy. You entertain so well and educate us at the same time. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Such a great place. This is such a great place.
I hope the in-person audience will join us for a glass of wine, and I'm sure Andrew will be happy to answer more questions as he's signing your book.
Yes, that's the idea. Right, exactly. Oh, great. Oh, thank you.